And that's all I have right now. So we have no planning consultant report, no public hearing, no old business, so new business. Ms. Douglas, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? Is this working? We at Cobalt Community Research
So you have to pull it closer, really close.
We've met with members of the Planning Commission, have attended trustees meetings, have heard comments from the public, have spoken with the staff here, and have, as a result of that, developed a series of objectives for the research that you have commissioned us to do. We feel it's important that we agree that we understand and make sure we all agree on the desired results. I mean, not the data that we want to get, but what we want this survey to accomplish. And so tonight we have 9 objectives, draft objectives for the research that we propose to do. And I'm here to listen, to see, this is not a finite list. It could be longer, it could be shorter, and we will ultimately take this list to the Board of Trustees, but I'm here tonight to make sure we're on the right track with the results that you, or the information you want to gather from this study. If you like, would you like me to read through these for the benefit of those listening?
That would be great.
We've drafted 9 objectives. 1, to give the Township Board and Planning Commission useful information to guide their decisions. 2, to broadly determine whether the residents of Northfield Township want more residential development in the township and to measure the strength of their opinions. To guide planning, identify which features of an ideal future township are the most important to residents. To determine if and how the respondents' location affects their opinions. To determine how the possible location of residential developments affects opinions. To determine the relative strength of opinions regarding how people perceive they might benefit from development. To determine the relative strength of opinions about what is good for the community. To identify other reasons why people oppose or support more development. And then to determine if and how demographic status, age, income, education, and gender affect opinions.
Okay.
So you had this in your packet a week ago. I'm hoping you've had a chance to look it over, and we're interested in if we're on track here, what more you would like to see, or whether you would bless this and have us move on.
I'll let the rest of the board start. If you have any comments about these objectives. No one? Okay, I have a lot. So I'm looking at these objectives, and I'm trying to fill them out, you know, wondering how the questions are going to be phrased to determine some of these things, because there's concepts and issues that we would want to know about from our citizens. So one of the, I'm just going to go down the list, and this is in no particular order. It's just some things that I've put together myself, and then things that the public has talked about too. So one thing is about development and the sewer capacity issues that we face. Right now, we're currently over our maximum capacity committed, but we're not using it all the time. And I'm just wondering how to gauge how the public feels about the expansion of the sewer system, so that we can handle the current capacity that we may need in the area that's already defined to have sewer service. And how does that fit into one of these questions or these objectives?
I would say that when we say we want to determine the relative strength of opinions about what is good for the community, that's I think your question would fit under that objective.
Okay. So I'm thinking that I'm going to need to give you these kind of concepts or these ideas or these things that need to be queried, because I'm not seeing that listed out here. So, so there's the sewer capacity issue. There's also the sewer service area. So I have, I'm wondering what the public thinks about. Is it large enough, or should it be expanded? I mean, is there enough commercial, industrial, or or residential within that area to handle where we may like to be someday? So would they feel that it needs to be expanded, or is it large enough? And so when I'm thinking about those kind of issues, I think the public out there may not have a frame of reference, like how many acres how many residences are currently in that sewer service area, how many businesses of various kinds are currently in that sewer service area, and how much room is there for expansion within the area that we already have designated. And if there's not enough, then they may be inclined to say, well, we would need a larger sewer service area, in which case that would perhaps have the township move in another direction of expansion of the sewer treatment facility. So those are the kind of questions that I would like answers to, because that's important. Janet, go ahead. I have a bunch more, but go ahead.
I'm just thinking of a simple way to phrase it is, wouldn't you be asking people, would you like to see the sewer district expanded? Where would you like to see it expanded to? That kind of a question.
Well, that's part of it.
I mean, the thing I think we've got to be careful of is concept versus granular.
Right.
Yeah.
I assume we're going to see a series of questions that we're going to go over. We did this in the school, and we had to be very careful of education jargon. And I think we need to be very cognizant of that and be very careful of planning jargon.
I agree.
You have to remember you're going over the general public that has varying degrees of knowledge and interest in planning. But I think when the questions, when you start to develop a series of questions and we start going through them, there may be questions that we feel are not where we want to go with it, and you can tell us why that's there, and maybe develop other questions that come from our discussions when we go through the questions. At least that was my experience when I went through it with an education survey we did in Ann Arbor and Whitmore Lake. So,
okay.
Just a thought.
Mr. Iaquinto.
So if I'm understanding what you're looking for, ma'am, you're looking for objectives and then additional topics like we're giving you. You're going to go ahead and take that, develop the questions, and then bring them back for our review, where we can then evaluate the style, et cetera, of those questions, correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, I think that's what we should stick to, is the topics. Let the professionals handle the way that they're going to ask the questions, and then we can review them later.
Okay. I just don't want to get a bunch of I just want to get this all out there so that when I get the questions back, I'm not either that I'm not disappointed that maybe I didn't say something, or I might think that they're the most wonderful questions in the world. So I don't know what to expect because I've not seen questions yet. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. Mr. Stanilecho, question?
I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that some of the details that you're discussing, most people aren't going to have any clue of what you're talking about. So if you propose a question that people don't understand, you're not really going to get much information from it. So, how in a survey do you explain exactly where the sewer district is or capacities when it basically took a whole evening for it to be explained to us?
Well, I don't think
how
we
do
need
you do that in a question?
Right.
So.
I don't think we need that kind of detail, but I just wonder if there's going to be any map, or if we just want to broadly or generally say we have our sewer district is along the US 23 corridor, Janet?
So when can we expect a list of questions that we can review if we want to add or change?
I have some draft questions tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to, if you've done strategic planning, you start from broad objectives
Mhm.
and then move
Right.
down to tasks. And so before we talk about questions, I mean, I want to make sure that we agree on the objectives. And even then, the questions we've drafted are really examples of questions, and that, yes, certainly is going to be where we will value, I mean, you may see things that you know about clearly that we're not aware of, and we will look for ways to tie them in, but always in a way making sure that the questions speak to the objectives you've asked us to address.
Mhm. Okay. I have a whole bunch more, but go ahead, Mr.
I mean,
Dignan.
the one thing I don't see here is addressing the residents' feeling towards preservation zones, areas they want to see maintained, because I'd like to know that too. I mean, yes, we want to know about growth, but yes, we also want to know about the community's sentiment of
Mhm.
areas they see naturally lend themselves to some sort of preservation in some way. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the landowners in those areas feel that same way, but and I'm not sure how we get to that,
Land
but
preservation.
as a broad topic, it just would be nice to be able to get that understanding out of this as well.
Right.
Well, I guess you could just
Check.
change number 6 around and say, determine the relative strength of opinions regarding how people perceive they might benefit from land preservation. Right.
Okay. So beyond the sewer service area, I've got another thing about what basic needs or services would they be interested in having in Northfield Township. And so I'm just throwing these out here. Maybe other people have other ones. I don't think this is necessarily beyond the scope of our master plan, but I put down, I've been asked about public transit or municipal water. Is there any interest out there in pursuing either of those on a township level? Because this isn't just for the Planning Commission. I think the Board of Trustees will like some of this information also. The public would like some information, yeah. So anyway, I put public transit down and municipal water. If anyone thinks of any other ones, basic needs or services.
How about garbage pickup?
Garbage pickup.
I'm serious.
Like
I mean,
a township-wide
waste-
garbage pickup?
Yeah.
No, well, maybe not even township, I mean.
Why not?
Maybe
We
it is
pay that, we
township-wide.
pay one of the highest taxes in this area by far, and we have to pay for our own private garbage pickup.
They'll just add it onto your bill. I mean,
Well, sure, but
if the township does it.
one waste removal company versus the 4 that come down on 4 different days in my 2-block neighborhood.
There you go, right.
You
I'm
save
serious.
a lot on the wear of the roadways, most definitely. And
Yeah.
hopefully you could have a
Yeah.
successful bidding process for. Yep.
Okay.
That might be another one too, since roads came up, how does the community feel about special assessment districts or roads repair and maintenance?
Okay. SADs for road
So-
repair.
Such as like an additional millage
Yeah,
for
mhm.
roadways. Okay.
Sorry.
We'll see about that.
Well,
Um,
one of the
go
things
ahead.
that I was going to ask is, there should be a question that involves, or would people be willing to pay an additional millage to preserve developmental rights, like
Yes.
some of the other surrounding communities have?
Right.
And/or for recreation, being on the Parks and Rec
Yeah.
Committee, it would be nice that if the survey was incorporating that type of questioning as well, if the public is willing to pony up essentially for Parks and Rec property.
Needs a little spongy.
Objective number 3 here, which says to guide planning, identify which features of an ideal future township are the most important to residents. There's tons of questions
Okay.
that would fall under that objective. I mean, really, all of these suggestions, I would think, would be would address that objective.
Okay. That's great. Okay, and continuing on, I've got what amenities should Northfield Township provide? And I've got a waterfront park. It'd be really nice for the public to have access to the lake, so other than having to have a boat. That's the Van Curler issue, but.
Right,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking, investment in community assets is kind of where it comes down to.
Right.
Whether that be Park areas, obviously, we're making an investment in our non-motorized path. But what about a township-wide non-motorized path project? Yes, stuff like that, the lakefront. But what about also economic development? So if you have, would the community be interested in investing in economic development in the Hamlet area, in the downtown area, to try to spur growth and spur, when I say growth, I mean spur businesses to the downtown to make it a lively destination downtown, a place where people want to come to be downtown, to walk around, to see, I don't know. But that's certainly a question that comes up, is do you want some of your tax dollars to go towards those things?
Or funding for biking trails and, connecting with all the trails in the area.
Yeah.
And you're saying that a lot of that's going to already be incorporated in, like, that Objective 3, so makes sense.
Okay.
And
So,
we have now had a chance to review the studies that you did in 2009 and the one in 1999. So we do anticipate taking some of the responses to those two surveys and coming back and retesting those questions again, just to benchmark and to see how opinions may have changed.
okay. I've got a downtown park or gathering space, lake access and bike trails, so those were also on my list. And then I was wondering if there was a possibility to ask about transportation and traffic issues that people may have. Are they experiencing congestion? I mean, other than US 23, I don't know, but
I think that's a hard one to address right now.
potentially,
Especially
yeah.
with what is going on, what's going on with 23 right now. I mean, you can already see they're putting in the traffic cameras. They're putting in bases for the poles to go up and over,
The gantries, yeah.
the expansion to a temporary use lane, and I don't know that the data would be valid because so much is changing over the next 18 to 24 months that has a direct impact on that element of the community. I mean, you'd get all your data and then your whole thing's
Right.
tipped upside down, so.
Well, if
I
we
don't know
had a
how much
question, we could
focus-
delete it if it didn't seem to be
Yeah.
appropriate,
Yep.
Okay.
I've noted it. I mean, I don't know about,
Mhm.
but, look, I've made a note of it. Let's see if we can, because it could conceivably fit in, what features of an ideal township are important to people.
Okay. Vision, yeah. I also have down commercial and industrial development. I'm just wondering what kind of, and I don't know if the rest of you all want to know this, but what types of businesses would they most welcome into the township, and what types of businesses would they prefer not operate in the township? Potentially the same list. It depends, it depends. But if we're going to go out and attract businesses, there should be some guidance,
There you go. What types of businesses would you like the township to try to attract?
Attract.
Not which ones don't we want
Okay,
necessarily.
okay. Okay.
Who and what types of businesses do we want? You start going down the other path, and it's scary.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'm wondering also if they believe enough land is set aside for commercial and/or industrial development. Maybe that's, they wouldn't have any concept of that, but I don't know. Then downtown development or redevelopment is a big one. Yeah. Residential development, what kinds and densities? I don't know how to phrase that whole thing, but I'm sure you all would know how. Farmland preservation. So what value do they place on preserving farmland in the township or preserving open space in the township? Would they support a small millage to preserve lands or open spaces? Preserve lands of high natural or farming value in the township. So, so then there's the whole list that we've talked about, Parks and Rec, all of that. So that's pretty much it for my list.
On that last note that you just made, I know the county's doing some unique stuff with preservation and development rights, but it's public access to development right properties. So not only do you give development rights or land preservation rights, but if it's, let's say, a farmer that has a 600-acre farm and 200 acres are wooded, and they happen to connect one property to another where the county or the township or the state could come in and put a pathway through, that they'd allow limited public access to those preserved lands. I think that's a unique concept. I know that
Yeah.
county's been looking at it in Northfield Township with 3 different properties right now along, I think, the 7 Mile area. And I don't know, it's an interesting concept of yes, you're preserving it, but you're also giving limited access and use to it. So it has very low impact, but just thought.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs out there, the Legacy Land Conservancy. If there was some little pot of money that could be leveraged for more, that might be helpful also. So it's just a question, is there interest out there, within our community? And we don't have, I was taking a look at the RFP, and we've only got 8,245 people in the township. That's not very many. So, so we don't have that's high. I thought that's what I read. Yeah. Yeah. So we're really a small community, So it's a burden, taxes are a burden. But, it's like what's valuable. And this survey, I'm really looking forward to getting the results from it. Any more questions about concepts before I ask something else?
I will say here that one of the things I hear that I suspect we want to add as an objective is to, and I'm going to put this, crudely, but test people's tolerance for paying for the things that they want.
Yeah. Okay.
I think now's definitely the time to do that. We're on an upswing, supposedly, and people are starting to do better, and there's things they want.
And if I may add, I serve in a community, I serve in Royal Oak, and Cobalt did a research project for our city. And some of the results, in fact, asked people what their tolerance was for a road millage and for public safety millage, and the very high scores in favor of those 2 areas led the city to successfully go out for millages in those 2 areas. So it does give those of you who are trustees some confidence in knowing that there is support for the benefits that you want to bring to the people.
I'm going to say, ultimately, we all live here, so it's not like we're the outside body. We're all residents, and so the asking people if they want to pay for something in your community really makes sense. It's a benefit for everybody, and if people, the voting process, if most people say no, then that gives direction. If they say yes, that gives direction, which is what we're looking for.
Right. Okay. Could you explain how you're going to manage the confidentiality of the surveys coming back?
We know we do know the addresses of the respondents, and it's part of our code of ethics to not tell you who they are. That is, we only deal in aggregate data with you. We do anticipate breaking down some responses based on geography, and we're still determining how finely tuned we can make that geography. We can break it down by voting precinct. We think we can break it down using the sub-areas that were part of your preceding study. So again, you get an apples-to-apples comparison. And we may, depending on how data sets match up, be able to analyze it by zoning, so that we can look at people who live in certain zoning classifications and see how their opinions differ from others.
Okay.
But we don't tell.
Okay. So I just wondered how someone can be assured talking about this, you know, with
Aren't
my
they-
husband, for instance. You know, we get surveys all the time. They're always asking for income and age, and, I mean, they ask a lot of personal information that we just never fill out. But it would be valuable to have for this, but there's always the confidentiality issue. And you know, in a small town, like, I don't know.
So are you asking where does the information go other than to Cobalt? I
Well,
mean, what do
Cobalt's
they
going
do
to
with
get it, right, but,
right.
you know.
But I think, isn't everybody assigned a certain ID number and then, so you can't duplicate, for one
Yes.
thing, right?
Right. So how do you make you know, is there going to be an online option?
People will receive a mailing that directs them to go on, that's our preferable way of collecting data, that directs them to go online and complete the survey. They also have the option of filling out a paper survey and mailing it in, and we have, you know, back rooms, people who will transcribe all of that and enter it into our data.
Okay.
I also anticipate, if this makes sense to me, but then again, I worked in the public relations field much of my career, doing some publicity right about the time that the survey announcement is going out, just to generate awareness of it and to increase our responses. Although the fact that you're willing to survey the entire community is great, to not rely on a sample and really query everyone in the community, I think is going to give you some powerful data.
The suggestion would be having a story put in the Current, because it does hit all of the township residents. And so at least if a story is put in there, the residents that read it could know that this is something that the township has hired a company to go ahead and do, and so it's a legitimate survey, for those that may not have heard.
Right, and Cobalt would write the article for the Current,
With
right?
That way it's non-biased, yes.
Certainly with your
Well, it's in, we have
Sure.
our
Oh,
public
yeah.
service channels, so we can use that.
I mean, all of it, yeah, I mean, everything, all of it. I mean, I'm just giving a suggestion. I mean, definitely all the channels that we can. The more media that we can get this to with that story is beneficial, so that the public does understand this is a sanctioned survey and not like you know, like you're concerned, Marlene, of somebody just trying to solicit information.
Well, I'm not so much concerned about that. It's just that some people are concerned about that, you know, like retribution. If somebody finds out how they filled out the survey, and, you know, just, it is a small community.
That's all private, though.
But it has to be private, you know. There has to be assurances that it's going to be private. I fill out stuff for the ag census all the time, and I understand, you know, and they give me this little code, and then I go online and I fill it out, and then I don't have to send in the mailed-in one, but they know I filled it out. Now, if I filled out both of them, then you would be able to eliminate one.
right.
And you, okay.
I think that one of the challenges we'll have is communicating with the residents of the townships that are in South Lyon and the Ann Arbor School District, more so. And the reason I say that is we can utilize school resources to notify the community in the Northfield Township, Whitmore Lake School District area at the school. That's something that it's within our policies to be able to say, you know, be aware you're going to be looking for this in your mail from the township, and the Current hits there. Does the Current hit the Ann Arbor zip code in the township? I don't think it's.
It used to. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
presently.
I don't know if it does, but I want to, you know, we got to
I'm
make
in,
sure.
yeah, I'm in the Ann Arbor
Zip code?
zip code, and I get it.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right. I just, you know, I want to make sure that we're cognizant of if those areas are more difficult to reach, that there's a concerted effort also to get those people into the loop.
I'm not in the Ann Arbor School District, I'm in the Ann Arbor zip code.
Your Whitmore Lake School District?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm in the South Lyon School District, and I get it.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
good. Then that's a little bit less of a concern, but still something
Right.
worth noting and being
Right.
aware of.
Okay. Well, do
Okay,
we?
So,
Go ahead.
so you answered my question briefly just a minute ago, that we've decided this is a community-wide survey, but it's an online it's preferred to be an online answer system. So the deal is we're sending out individual identities to each household, and then they plug in that code, and that's how we know that that's been distributed and comes back to us.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
And we do have a certain sector of the township that doesn't get internet, yeah. Mhm.
Well,
Okay.
most of the township doesn't get internet as far, isn't that true or not, or is it just me?
Well, I only get it from my,
Right, your cellular
Cellular.
hotspot.
right, right, so.
Does your library, do you have a library here in the township?
Mhm.
So, and assume that has computers and access. Perhaps we need to mention that in the cover letter.
Okay, they could do that. Now, what other groups might be important to have some input on the content of this survey? And I was thinking the DDA might be an important contributor to content if there's something missing that they want to know. You know, so I'm looking for ideas here if anyone thinks this is important.
The only, being a past member of the DDA, you've kind of already touched that, if what type of industry would be beneficial for the community. I mean, that's...
Right. But I just wonder if there's something else in the back of their mind, or, you know, or the school. Would Whitmore Lake Public School need to know the answer to anything, or...
I think the information you're gathering would be helpful. I think honestly it'd be helpful to Whitmore Lake and the other three school districts technically, because 4 houses are in Dexter.
Right.
Would be interested in looking at the data, but without distracting from the reason we're doing this. No, because you know, I think the school district questions that would be asked would be, is not the purpose of this survey,
True.
and I wouldn't want to distract from the purpose of the survey with a question that would be an obscure question that would be so. And honestly, I think every piece of information we're talking about here is a key element to information the school would want. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, would anything appropriate to magnet schools, or, you know, anything, I mean, would attitudes about anything like that, since we're spending all this money, and it might just be one little line, I'm just wondering.
I mean, we'll talk about it and see. I'll
Okay.
definitely talk to my superintendent and the board and see what their thoughts are.
Okay.
If it is, we'll be very focused with what we're trying to ask. We have to also be cognizant of the fact that half the township isn't in our district.
Right.
So, but we'll see.
Well, once the questions are prepared and they're distributed for people to say, oh, but you've left this thing out, or, you know, maybe there's an opportunity there to add something if necessary.
If you want information about that is relevant to the schools, I think that needs to be one of the objectives.
Okay.
Because that's quite a different direction, different set of questions, different sources for questions. So this is, I think, the point where you decide yes or no. Do you want questions relevant to the school district or of value to them?
Well, I'm asking Mr. School Board here.
If we did, and this is me speaking as an individual, not as the president of the board, I think the objectives would be more about, are there educational opportunities that you feel are missing, or are there educational opportunities you would like to see expanded in your local school district? And kind of in your surveying ways, you know, try to narrow that down to whether they be program type options or, well, no, funding is just it's too complex of an issue to get into in a survey with school districts, because nobody knows where funding comes from for schools. They don't. But it would have to be around, go ahead.
I have an idea, you know, well, so we have planned for more development around the high school.
Yep.
I mean, how do people feel about their kids being able to walk to school? You know?
Well, the kids don't like it at all.
I know the kids don't like it, but it's good for
But the
them,
parents
you know?
think like it a tremendous amount.
It just depends, you know, like if there's more subdivisions around the schools, kids would be able to walk to school.
Right. Well, the key element to that is safety.
Yeah, is that a value?
It is a
value?
safety
Yeah.
issue. The
Yeah.
township's addressing some of the safety concerns we have right on Main Street with sidewalk that connects Westbrook Apartments to the middle school where the kids pick up a bus to be transported.
Right.
So they're walking and busing. So, you know, certainly infrastructure investment in those areas that we are considering a growth area. If it's a growth area near a school, well, the infrastructure needs to be there for or needs to be planned there, so that if a development is built, you know, a quarter mile away from a school, what's that last quarter mile look like? Can the children from that subdivision walk to the local school, or do we have to be bused because that last quarter mile has no sidewalk? Certainly those kinds of things are very important. They may ring in some importance too. We're you know, at the school district, we're trying to work with the township as well on, you know, connecting projects, because certainly our lands can be used in connecting things. So, yeah, I mean, there's just definitely some relevance there. It just so happens that we're right in the Hamlet area. All three of our buildings are relatively close to the Hamlet, or at least north of North Territorial. So, I mean, if you're looking at that core area, it is very relevant to the school district, but
I just wonder if that's something that parents would value, if they felt safe
I
allowing
think they
their
value
kids
the
to
fact
walk
that their
to
kids
school.
don't have to be on the road, they don't have to be on a bus for an hour, they don't have to, you know, that stuff's important. As long as their walking path is safe,
Right.
you know, and available.
Right.
That's, you know, I
Yeah.
can't tell you how important this non-motorized path on Barker Road is to the school district. It's very important. So, finishing that last bit is important to us as well, and we're excited about that. But
Okay.
so it does play a key role.
Anything more? Does anyone want to contribute?
I just have a question for our guest here. Is there some scientific magic number of questions that go on a questionnaire where you just get people petering off and they're like, I'm done? And seriously, I mean, I get that. I cannot stand all the internet. Would you rate our thing? I always say no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. I mean, I'm sure some people do, but I'm not going to take my time to do that. It's going to be a big struggle for us just to get people to respond to this thing. What do you expect a response rate to be for a community of this size, for these kinds of issues? And what do you think is a reasonable number of questions to pose to get good data back?
Our standard is 4 pages. I mean, when you look at it on paper, 4 pages is pretty much what we work with. And as I said earlier, we've started drafting questions, and we're only at 2 pages right now. So we've got some room to add, touch on the issues that we've talked about here tonight. So response rate, I hate to make guesses. But the fact that we're going out to the entire community and not to a sample certainly means that aggregate data, that is, when we show data that is community-wide, it's going to have an extremely high level of reliability. Then when you start breaking it down into sub-areas or zoning areas or precincts, then your reliability declines just because you've got a smaller sample size there.
Are you thinking 25% or something like that?
I don't even think it's that high.
You don't think
Yeah,
it'll be that high?
No, more like 10.
10.
Yeah.
10%.
Really?
I know, when we sent out,
800 responses is a very reliable number.
the last survey that went out in 2010 went out to over 3,000 people, and we received over 400 responses, so that was more than 10%.
Okay. That's good. Okay.
You're going to provide us questions that we're going to be able to take home with us and crunch on and figure and understand and come back to you. I'm assuming you're going to refine this list and come back to us too with things? Or?
What I would like to come away with is, assuming that we add an objective that says we will measure the tolerance for additional costs for the amenities that people set as high priorities. So add that as a 10th objective. I would like to have action on this list of objectives tonight.
I personally don't have any objection to that.
No, I think it's a good list. Does anyone else have any comment on it? We could, well, I'll make a motion to adopt the,
Can I just ask a question first?
okay, go ahead.
Okay, but we were going to change, or either change or add another objective relating to item number 6. Are you going to combine development and land preservation, or make a separate objective for land preservation?
What I would recommend that read is determine the relative strengths of opinions regarding how people perceive they might benefit from outcomes in the community. That is
good.
not use development or preservation, but use a more neutral word.
Well,
I don't like that term.
yeah, what does that mean?
It's not, I'd rather have something specific that doesn't sound very,
I think we want to know one way or another
yeah.
how they feel on each item.
What, I mean, you'd have to
Outcomes
define
is too
outcome
general.
then, yeah. What,
Your questions would
Well, the
steer
questions would be
one
more
way,
specific.
would steer,
okay, yeah, that's the
person
objective you're
through,
saying. The objective is
multiple
that.
things. That's not necessarily the questions.
Right. I mean, the questions will test interest in development versus preservation.
Okay, all right.
well, I
That
don't
makes
know. I
more
just
sense.
don't like the word outcome, so can we leave development or preservation here?
Yeah, yeah, it's a category. We don't need to be neutral on the categories as far as our objectives go.
Right,
It's-
okay. So we can leave it, development or land preservation, right?
I think if
And-
you leave development in, non-development will of course be an option that we test.
Okay.
Hang on.
Land
I don't-
preservation,
Let's do either or so that
Say
we're
and or.
more comfortable with it.
What about determine the relative strengths of opinions regarding how people perceive they might benefit from development and
And-
preservation?
Right.
Because I don't like it being an either or, because I think we can have both. It just depends on where people perceive both to be.
right.
I don't, it's not a win-all, lose-all game. There's a balance, and that's what we're looking for, is to understand that balance and where that balance should appear and
Right.
be.
Right, you can benefit from land preservation and you can benefit from
Right,
development.
fine.
That's the plan.
So, yeah,
So you want to say development
And
and
preservation.
preservation, not or preservation?
And.
Okay.
And preservation.
okay. And then the 10th objective would be measure tolerance to additional costs to.
For the top priorities of what people want.
Okay. Okay. All right. right, well, I'll make a motion to approve this list of 10 objectives for the community-wide opinion
Support.
research. Okay, motion by Chalkley, support by Dignan. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Douglas. This was really helpful. Do you have an idea of when we might see the questions? Soon? Like 2 weeks, 6 weeks? Oh, no, a week. Wow. Yeah.
Sorry, end of next week.
Okay. When will we need to take action again? Because our next meeting is July 15th. We'll,
One possible step, and it really depends on how quickly the community wants to act. One possible step would be to take these objectives, which you've approved, further drafts of questions directly to the Board of Trustees. Or bring it back to the Planning Commission, as you will.
okay. I don't have a problem with the Board of Trustees seeing it at the same time.
So I was going to say, can you just release it to both at the
Yep.
same time? Fine.
But it would go to the trustees for final approval.
Right, right. So we can all see it, and we can all see if there's anything missing, or we're comfortable, or whatever. Okay, that sounds good. All right,
And when is the next trustees meeting?
Janet. I should know this. I was just looking at it today.
So your agenda deadline is a week out?
Ours is 8 days out. Yeah, the Board of Trustees is July 14th.
And what's the agenda deadline typically for meetings? A week? Which would be the 7th, which is,
Yeah.
no, we won't, we can't get it on your agenda in time for the 15th. So it would be the
Okay.
meeting after that.
Okay, now they have a workshop meeting on the 28th.
And what was that date again?
Mhm. Yeah, we have a meeting on the 15th, but our deadline is the 8th. So then we'll have another meeting on the 5th of August.
So but the trustees have a working session on the 28th.
28th.
And then an action session
On the 11th of August. On the 5th of August. Yeah, we won't get it on the 15th. If she can't get it done for the 7th, she's not going to get it done for the 8th.
and the
so-
7th is next Tuesday.
Yeah, that's pretty
Right?
fast. But we could all be looking at it. No, we don't need it for our packet. We can look at it, all of us look at it. And we'll discuss it on the 5th. Yeah, potentially the 5th. Okay,
Okay?
okay.
Can
Well,
do.
whatever works for you. Thank you. All right. Well, next item on the agenda is